Hi all, welcome back to the next session of on analytical function. Okay, so in the previous session we discussed some of the analytical functions like row number, rank, and dance rank. Today we are going to discuss few more important analytical functions. Okay, so first I'm going to discuss with you guys about the first value analytical function. Okay, so let's start. So let me run this query and I will explain you the output of this particular query. Okay. So if you see first value of what? First value of salary. Ignore nulls. I will explain you what is this ignore null and the same analytic clause which we usually have in all the analytical function. You already know what is partition by department ID, what is order by. You already know about that. Okay. So let's talk about the first value function. So if as I am doing, I am partitioning this result set on the basis of department ID. So in the first partition with department 10, it will have only one row. Okay. So what this first value function is going to do is it is going to pick the first row. It is going to pick the first row of of each department, and then it is going to take the salary of that row. Okay, so like in this particular department, if you see there, we only have one row in this particular department, in this particular partition. Okay, so in this particular partition we only have one row, so this will be the first row, and from the first row it is going to pick the salary, which is 4400. So the first value function will evaluate to 4400, and I have given this an alias as lowest in department because it is the first row will be always the salary of the first row in each department will always be lowest, right? If I am ordering these rows on the basis of salary in ascending order, right? Let's talk about the next. Let's talk about the next partition that we have with department number 20. Okay. So in this particular partition, if you see, we have two rows. Okay. So as I explained you that it is going to pick the first row and then the salary of that particular row because we have mentioned the column name salary in the first value function. So it is going to pick the salary of the first row in this particular partition. So in this particular partition, the first row is 6,000. It is ordering these row on the basis of salary because we have put order by close over here, order by salary. So it is going to sort these two rows on the basis of salary, and then it is going to pick the first salary of the first row as the first value function, right? So it is going to evaluate it to 6,000 because the first row is having the 6,000 as a salary, right? So for each partition we will have only one value and it will be same for all rows, right? Okay, so let's talk about the next partition. In this particular partition, if you see, so it has sorted the row on the basis of salary, and the first row is this, so it is going to pick the salary of this particular row and it is going to populate this for all the rows, right? Let's go to the next partition. In a similar way, if you can see, it is sorting these rows on the basis of salary and it is going to pick the salary of the first row. So all the rows in this particular part, all the rows in each partition will have the same value for this particular function, right? Okay. Now let's talk about the last value function. We also have a last value function as we have uh, first value function. So as the name indicates, now it is going to pick the last salary of the last row in that particular partition, right? And not the first row, not the salary of the first row. So if you see, let's talk about the last partition. Okay. So if you see, in this particular partition, we have say 5 rows. So first it is going to sort these rows on the basis of salary in the ascending order. right? Because by default Oracle order by or behavior of order by is by default ascending, right? So it is going to ascend these rows on the basis of salary, and then it is going to check the value of the last value of the last salary of the last row actually it is going to pick. But if you see, the result is not as we discussed, right? If you see for all the other I mean whatever we discussed in first value function, the behavior is different over here. If you see, it is just going to, it is not picking the 11,000 over here and populating it over here. It is actually calculating like this. So for each row the salary, it is going to actually it is going to calculate the different value for this particular function, and it is as same as the salary of that particular row, right? So this is something interesting. Okay, so we need to uh, I'm going to tell you the reason behind this particular behavior of this function. Okay, so the default behavior of any analytical function is what uh, so let's talk about the first row. Okay, so there is something called as range between keyword, okay, and rows between keyword. Okay, so the default behavior of the Oracle is, if you are not using those keywords, then it is always going to take uh, unbounded preceding and the current row. Okay, unbounded preceding and the current row. So if we talk about the first row, okay, in this partition only we are talking about. If we talk about the first row, so so our range to calculate the last value function will always be 1, right? Because it is what as I suggested that it is going to the range will be unbounded. By default range will be unbounded preceding and the current row. So unbounded preceding is nothing in this case, but we have current row over here, so it is only one row. So this row will be the range. So it will have a range of which will have only one row in that particular range, and it will calculate the salary. So last salary will be this salary of this particular row only, right? Because we have only one row in this particular range. Now let's talk about the next row. When it is going to calculate the value of this function for the next row. So again, it is going to check. I mean, the default behavior of analytical function is what? It is going to consider the unbounded preceding and current row. So this is the current row, and unbounded preceding in this partition will go till here, right? So we will have in this range two rows, right? So in this range we will have two rows. Now we are calculating the last value, so it will actually calculate 4800 for this particular row, right? Because we are calculating for this row, not for this row. So when we are calculating the last value function on for this row, okay, so the range will be including these two rows, and out of these two rows, whatever will be the last salary of the last row will going to be picked up. Similarly, let's calculate the last value for the third row. So as I told you that the default range will be from unbounded preceding to current row. So in this partition, the unbounded preceding will go till here, right? Till here in this partition. So we will have going to have three rows in this particular partition. For this the range we will have going to have three rows in this while we are going to calculate the value of this function. So we are going to have three rows in for this row. The range will be these three rows, okay, and then in this range it is going to check the last row, and the salary of that particular row will be picked up, right? Similarly, if you see for this, so it is going to have the range will be from this row to this row, right? So it is going to have 4 rows in its range, right? So the last row of this range will be 6000, and right, the last row the 6000, so it is going to calculate as 6000, right? So similar way it is going to calculate the last value. So I hope you understood the concept over here about the default behavior of the range of Oracle. If you have not mentioned any range, so this will be the default value behavior of the Oracle. Now what I am going to show you is that the desired output that we were looking for, that we got in the first value function, the similar output we can get if we just modified something. I mean, we just need to modify the range. Okay, so here we are doing that. First let me run this SQL query, and then I will explain you, and let's check if we are getting the desired output or not. So if you see, for this particular partition which is having this particular row, highest in department will be, so last value will, last value, salary of the last row will be 4400. So it is okay. Let's talk about the next partition. If you see, for the first row, okay, for the first row in this particular partition, it is calculating 13,000. It means it is going to consider the next row as well in this particular partition. So this is the kind of behavior we were expecting, right? That we want highest salary in the department. So that's how you can get it. What we need to do is, if let's say we remove this range between unbounded preceding and unbounded following, because the desired output is being I mean, we are getting this desired output just because of this these keywords that we have applied. If we don't use these keywords, so it is going to give the same results which we don't want, right? So what this particular keywords are doing, so as I told you that this is not, now it is not going to take the default behavior, it is going to take this particular range. So the range between unbounded preceding and unbounded following. So for this partition, let's talk about the third partition. So for this partition, we have defined, for each partition we have defined that the range will be unbounded preceding and unbounded following. Earlier, the default behavior of the Oracle was unbounded preceding and the current row, right? This was the range when we are not giving any keywords over here, when we are not defining any range. So default range is always unbounded preceding and the current row. But now we have defined that unbounded preceding, the range should be between unbounded preceding and unbounded following. So it will not be the same. For example, let's talk about the first row. So the range for the first row will be unbounded preceding, which is nothing, right? So it will start from this row only, and unbounded following. So unbounded following, it will capture this row, this row, this row, this row. So these rows will be coming into this particular range because it cannot move out of this partition, right? So it cannot go to the next partition. It will calculate the range only in this particular partition. So for this particular row, the range will be from this particular row to the last row of this particular partition, right? Sorry, I think we need to consider this particular row as well. Yeah, so this is now, we have these many rows in this particular partition, right? So out of this partition, it will not go beyond this particular partition. So for, if you see, for this particular row, what will be the range? Unbounded preceding is nothing. Unbounded following will come till over here. It cannot cross this partition. So unbounded following will come till now, till here. So all these rows will come in the range for this particular row. What about this particular row? If we talk about this particular row, so the range will be unbounded preceding. So preceding, it is having one row preceding to this particular row. So this row will come into picture, and unbounded following. So unbounded following will go till over here. So this, for this row also, we are going to have the range which is having these 6 rows, right? This for this particular row, unbounded preceding will go till here and unbounded following go till here. So if you see, for each row you're going to have, let's talk about the last row. For the last row, we are unbounded preceding will start from here. So this and this, but unbounded following is nothing, so it will stop over here only. So for the last row also the range will be from this row to this row. So if you see, for each row the range is same over here, and which is nothing but the set of rows in this particular partition, right? So the last value will be calculated in the basis of, so the last value, as the behavior of the function is, it is going to pick the last salary of the row, of the last row, salary of the last row in the range. So for each row the range will be from this row to this row. So what will be the last row? So the last row will be this. For each row the last row in the range will be this, and the salary of last row in the range will be 11,000. So for each row this function will evaluate to 11,000. I hope you understood the concept of the last value function, right? Now let's talk about